We are in the month of Margashish, and very soon there is a day on which Lord Krishna tells Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, that is Gita Jayanti Day. So we welcome you all. So yesterday we continued this topic, hard time on the basis of karma, and today Prabhu will lead us to the Dharma, from karma to Dharma. So we welcome Chaitanya Charan Prabhu for this second day session. I request Rohini Nandalila Prabhu to tag in Prabhuji. So thank you very much, Prabhuji, for being here. Hare Krishna. Thank you. We can start.
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachari Nirvishesha Shuddhavadi Paschatyadesh Vancha Kalupatasyasya Kripasindhubhyaeva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This guidance on so that it will forward your words of wisdom. Face life challenges, face me and Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for coming today. So, before we start, today's session, let's do a quick recap of what we discussed yesterday. Broadly, would any of you like to? Do we have a second mic? Hare Krishna. Second mic. Would any of you like to share any points that you remember from yesterday's session? What is the broad framework we are discussing for dealing with hard times?
We are discussing JIT framework, where first is
Chit.
concept, the insights, and takeaway. Right?
Concept, insight. So that was for each of the
Each of the
framework we are discussing. So concept of karma, they will discuss dharma, and tomorrow bhakti.
discuss the act,
Yes,
and
act.
then of the
So ACT. What is that?
from confusion and from confusion to discouragement to
Yeah.
confidence.
So where we may be initially will be confused at the level of the intelligence and discouraged at the level of emotions. From there we can rise toward becoming towards convinced and confident. We'll see how this can be done. So who would like to talk something more? Yeah, please. Take the mic.
First was Prabhuji accept.
Yes. So A was what was the acronym? ACT. So accept. Then C was
Commit.
commit. Yes. And T is
Transcend.
transcend. So each of these is related with one element of spirituality. So we accept by understanding karma. Yes. And we commit to
Dharma.
doing dharma. And then we transcend by
Bhakti.
practicing bhakti. Yes. Excellent. So any other points? This was the broad framework. A1. So the
A1 action plus the result, and result R1, R2, R3 can be vary, and
yeah.
first karma is there, then A1, A2, A3, and equal to R. It's
So the
equal.
basic principle of karma is A to R, but it can be A1 plus A2 plus A3 leads to R, or it can also be A leads to R1 plus R2 plus R3. So basically, the idea is we need to be able to expand our framework, both expand our framework forward and backward to be able to see the bigger picture in which how karma works. Excellent. Anything else?
Sometimes you told that the action can not be not can be sensible, non-sensible, and some part you may cannot know some part, but whole ocean can because you have a hope and being a product, that's like
Yes,
Vajnani,
So I was talking
Pandava,
about how all of us have to make a choice. That there will be times when life does not make sense. So when we have hard times when life doesn't make sense, so at that time, I have two ways of looking at it. One is I can say that nothing makes sense and nothing will ever make sense. The whole life is senseless. But then none of us functions like that. No, and we haven't functioned like that. So we have got some education, we have got some achievement, and that was we did something, then we got some results. So we all have experienced phases many phases in our life, and life does make sense. So this is unhealthy way. So sometimes what we understand is this is happening. That means I'm just going through a phase where so overall there is sense, but if I am right now, say I'm in one of those phases over here where things don't make sense. So this is just a phase, and let me push on through the phase. Isn't it? Any other points?
You told me what is about see the situation and action. That
Yes, excellent.
situations are reversible, forces are or action. We cannot reverse them.
Yeah. So when
So
we
we have
interact with the world, go ahead, please. Go ahead. So our actions are not reversed. Yes. So if we when we interact with the world, there's outside and there is inside. So in the outside, you will have situations which will come in our life, but they will change. They are reversible, and then the situations lead to emotions, and emotions are also reversible. But under the spell of the emotions, we may do actions. Those actions can be irreversible. So it's best to create some boundaries where now we can have boundaries at multiple levels. And if we get time, we'll talk about dharma today. I'll talk about dharma how many different meanings, but one of the meanings is boundaries. So best is we try to avoid those situations coming in our life. That's often not possible. We try to be avoid being influenced by those, agitated by those situations. Even if you're agitated, we don't act on it. Even if we act within some boundaries. So that way we can so broadly understanding karma, if we understand that why are these situations coming in my life, we'll be able to accept them even when they feel unfair. Thank you. Very good. Anything else?
Cause and effect.
Yes, we discussed how that this point of action and result. This is universal. Exactly now how it happens. I talk about universal means that's how we function in our daily life. That's how we deal with others. That's how society is governed. That's how even science also works. We try to make sense of things. But then we come to a situation where things don't make sense. And what do we do at that time? There was we just yes please. Yes.
For adversity, atrocity, and agony. And
Yes.
then
So hard times when we face, we discuss that there can be adversity and atrocity. What is the difference? Yes, adversity may be by nature, but atrocity is by human being. And agony is where it's like we ourselves have to do something bad, just don't have any choice. And that is the situation that Arjuna finds himself. It's very difficult, such a hard time. Like some hard times you can just tolerate, but some hard times we have to do something. Like, okay, I got cancer, I have to tolerate it. But some loved one, two loved ones have got cancer, and I can offer treatment only one of them. Whom do I offer treatment? How do we do it? So the Gita is in that kind of situation. So that's even harder to deal with because our actions will determine the stakes. Anything else? Yes, Prabhu. Mike.
Due to influence of media, more and more youngsters are concentrating more on what they are lacking. And how much they have, usually be 95%, and maybe lacking is 5%. But they concentrate more on lacking, and that is one of the reasons we are going into depression.
Yes, exactly. So for all of us, there are things which are right in our life, and there are things which are wrong in our life. So this will always be there for everyone. But what we focus on what is wrong, we will go down. We focus on what is right, we will go up. We'll try to become better. And while this is always there, but because social media comparison becomes so incessant, so constant that it leads to much more insecurity and depression. So I use a particular phrase for this combination of right and wrong. Yes. But what is the compound word I use? Life is fairly unfair. Yes. So it's unfair, but in the big picture, it will work out. It's not that we are singled out in particular ways. Life is fairly unfair. I discussed how some example from scripture of, yeah, Duryodhana and Pandavas. Pandavas were both of them faced unfairness in life in different ways. Both of them made different choices. Exactly. Yes, sorry. Yes. When we go up, we are resourceful. Otherwise, we become resentful. Go down. It's a good segue now to go toward today's topic. Thank you. Wonderful to see how many points we have assimilated here. So, yes, cloud of karma is above us. That's the key thing I'm going to discuss today. Sorry, talent plus commitment is equal to achievement. Okay, those are good points. I'm going to elaborate on them today also. So, now we move towards the concept of dharma. Now, here I'll use the same frequent chit. And so when I talk about the concept of dharma, see, the word dharma itself has many different meanings. In fact, I have a whole class on the Bhagavad Gita where I talk about how there are something between 7 to 9 meanings of the word dharma as used in the Bhagavad Gita itself. And there are many more meanings overall. But I'll focus on what is most relevant for us. So the idea is that often dharma is translated as duty. Dharma, Prabhupada also translates as nature, defining identity, and we'll come to that meaning also. But from a functional perspective, when we are to choose something, that see, for all of us, when we belong to or we join with, we become a part of any larger collective, then that gives us a dharma toward that collective. That if I am driving on the road, then I am being a part of the road transport system. And then when I am taking something from that larger whole, then I need to be giving something. So I should be following the rules. The principle of dharma is not a religious principle. It is at a fundamental level, it's a universal operational principle of reality itself. That dharma is at one level from the individual to the collective. And this is the sense in which Krishna uses the Arjuna uses the word dharma in 2.7, where he talks about Pruchhami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha. I want to know what is the right thing to do. What should I do in this situation? Should I fight or should I not fight? So pruchhami, that is dharma in the sense of what is the right thing to do. That is for the individual to the collective. At the same time, dharma is not just one way. It is two ways. The collective also has to do something for the individual. So if we are following the rules of traffic, then just because we belong to a particular region or race or religion, the traffic police should not be pulling us over and giving us fines even when we have not done something wrong. Or just because we belong to a particular community, they should not let us go. They should not let some people. So they should not. The larger collective should also be doing its part for the individual. So Krishna talks about this meaning of dharma in 4.8 when he says dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So when he says dharma, what is he referring to? Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chatushkruta. He's saying I'll bring about social change. When society is not functioning properly, say if there are heads of state, kings who are exploitative, for example, the heads of state are dictatorial, they simply take taxes but give no facilities. Then Krishna says, at that time, you tell the individual, be dutiful, be dutiful, be dutiful. Only the individual is dutiful and the leader, the collective is exploited. Then that will be a very bad situation. So Krishna says the collective also needs to be changed. So dharma has both these aspects. That the individual needs to contribute properly to the collective, and the collective also needs to reciprocate. And from this perspective, we can say dharma as a principle applies everywhere. If, for example, right now you come for a talk over here. Now, the way you belong to this talk, you contribute to this talk is by paying attention. If your phone is on, you keep the phone on silent mode. That you don't just chit chat with others. It is not that you come right in front and you turn your back to the speaker and speak. That would be all. Now that is because now here if I represent the collective, now if I expect you to pay attention, I should also come with sufficient preparation so that I am speaking something worth paying attention to. If I am speaking stuff which is same old stuff that you have heard many times, which is not really relevant for you, which is not understandable for you, then what is happening? And then I demand attention from you. That won't work. So dharma is basically, when you understand this way, it leads to harmony. There is harmonious belonging. The individual to the collective and the collective to the individual. And now, of course, these collectives can be many. That each one of us, say, we have dharma, we are in a hospital already. We have dharma to our bodies. That we should eat in a way that is healthy. We should exercise or whatever. There is something in a way which we belong properly to the body. So beyond that, we belong to a family. We belong to a community. We have a job. So if somebody is working in a company or working somewhere and they're simply taking salary and not doing any work, that organization will eventually collapse. If in now there are many countries in India, often there is still a problem of overpopulation, but in many countries of the world there's a problem of depopulation. They call it the depopulation bomb. Especially in the Western world, uh, many people just do not have children. Especially now, I'm not blaming feminism alone, but there's aggressive feminism which teaches young women that marriage and motherhood are traps that will prevent you from success in life. And so I have people delay it for very long. And now what happens? As societies are becoming older, people are becoming older, there are no children. And then there are more and more people. I was in UK, as I mentioned, this is a big problem in UK. That there are people who are taking pension or social security benefits are more and more. But people who are wealth producers are less and less. This is a big problem in China also. China, in order to stop its population, had for a long time one or none policy. They have only one child or no children. But now they have an aging population and young population is not there. So what do you do in this situation? So the point is that now what I'm saying, what the point I'm making over here is that if people are these people not being adharmic, somebody has become old, they can't work the way they used to. But in general society, if people who take are more than people who are giving, then that will lead to imbalance. So the point I'm making is dharma is not just a moral principle; it's an operational principle. That when there is imbalance in any way, then that will lead to problems. Now, imbalance can happen because of immorality, but it can happen by many other causes. So now we belong to many larger roles. Say we belong to a particular country. So now, like this, there are many larger forces we belong to, and the one large collective that contains all other collectives, that is ultimately God, that is Krishna. And when we connect with Krishna, that is Paradharma or Bhakti, and that I will talk about tomorrow. But right now, let's focus on this principle of dharma. So, dharma means that whichever larger collective I am belonging to, I need to do something for that collective, and that collective needs to do something for me. And that is how there will be harmony. So, with this basic understanding of the concept of dharma, now we say adharma, or we often use the word adharma with irreligion. But let's start with the idea of imbalance. That imbalance means like somebody is doing a lot when belonging to a particular larger group and they're not getting anything sufficient back. Then that leads to imbalance. So, for example, now lot of Indians leave India and go to other countries. Previously, we thought of it as brain drain, and there's some truth to that. But the the technical word uses diaspora, or we can say NRIs, that's the word we use over here. But the Indian diaspora, actually, the NRIs, they are talented, they are dedicated, they are very successful. And in America, Indians are considered the model minority. Model minority means that there's a lot of immigration happening, and they say if all immigrants to America were like Indians or Chinese, so they prefer Indians more than Chinese. Because Chinese are much more politically active. Indians are not that politically active because the Indian government doesn't work so well with the NRIs. Now the Indian government is starting working with them. But my point is that when Indians felt that, okay, if I stay in this country, my talent, my efforts will not be rewarded, then what will happen is they will choose to go to some other larger collective and be a part of that larger. Now, when they become a part of that larger collective, Indians generally are law abiding, tax paying, family raising, they're productive members, and that's why they're respected. Now, of course, you can say the Indians are respected, Indians are also envied because Indians often do quite well financially, and then that there's some envy because of that. But the point is that if I am in a particular collective, so now I'm moving from C to I, where inside, I'm moving towards the inside now. Concept of Dharma I already explained. And insight will take some time to understand because this will relate with our past studies concept of karma. So say if I am in a particular larger collective and I am doing a lot, and what I get from that is very little, then I may decide do I really want to belong to this collective? Then I may decide that I want to go to some other collective where what we are giving and what we are getting is proportional. Say if our child is in the school and the school is charging a lot of fees, but the education quality is very poor, and our child is not learning anything valuable. I don't want my child to be successful. So we are starting with dharma simply as an operational principle that there is reciprocity, what we give and what we give. So now let's make this let's consider a little more nuance or complication. In some situations, it's very simple. You can go out of one larger collective and go into another collective. But sometimes, it's not that simple. Like Indians who are Indians who go to West America, for example, they settle over there, and their children, some of the children are born over there. So often such children are referred to as coconuts. Now, why coconuts? Because they are brown from outside but white from inside. You know? So they may want to be like Americans, but they grown up in America. They may want to be like Americans, but they just can't be because their skin is brown, and that's something which can't be changed. So there are movies made about it also. There's a phrase called ABCD. ABCD is what? American born confused desis. So who am I? Am I Indian or am I American? So some things we cannot give up. It's not so convenient. Like we are working in one company, we give up that company, go to another company. But some things are a part of our identity. And that part, we may change it in some way, but it's not that easy. So now going back to Arjuna's starting problem, that he belonged to two larger collectives. One was he belonged to the Kshatriya collective. And Kshatriya collective means that whoever it is, he has a duty to fight. And he is also a part of the Kuru Vamshi. He is a part of the Kuru collective. And that collective requires him, don't fight. And thus, it is Dharma Sammoha. That he has two dharmas pulling him into opposite directions. Into opposite directions. And then now which dharma should be followed? Which dharma should be followed? So now, for example, if an India-Pakistan cricket match is going on, and say people from a particular community cheer if Pakistan wins, the Indians will get very angry. Do you belong to the country or do you belong to the religion? But then, when Indians go to Australia or Indians go to UK, many times cricket is very popular among Indians. So there are many cricketers say that in Australia we feel as if we are playing in India because the Indian fans in the cricket stadium are more than the Australian fans. And the Indians in Australia will not cheer for the Australian team. They will cheer for the Indian team. Now, of course, the difference is that many of the Muslims who were born here, they were never in Pakistan. So we could say Indians were in India and then they went to Australia or they went to UK. So the point is this that dual belonging, that belonging to multiple collectives and those collectives pulling in different directions. This is something which is universal. So when we face a problem of when we have to choose what to do, how to act in particular situations. So the understanding is that when we are to do our dharma, dharma is, we could call it duty. It is duty, but it is also a sense of belonging, a sense of contribution, contributing to a larger whole. So now, if we look at the Kauravas, if we look at the Pandavas, for example, now they tried as much as possible to bend backwards to accommodate the Kauravas. The belonging to the Kuru Vamsha, did that give them anything? No, it only gave them persecution. It only threatened them. See, all that the Pandavas achieved was by their Kshatriya qualities. They practically got nothing by being members of the Kuru dynasty. Because they got some respect, but more than the respect, they got threat because of it. And even when they got the Khandau kingdom, that was a barren wilderness. They worked hard and they made it into a flourishing kingdom in Indraprastha. So the idea is that when we are belonging to a collective, and that collective is demanding a lot from us and giving very little to us, then is it our duty to continue to belong to that? That is the Dharma Sammoha. That is the problem that Arjuna has to address. So at the one level, Krishna is telling Arjuna, you belong to the Kshatriya. Or you prioritize your belonging to the Kshatriya. And this is the course of action which Krishna recommends to Arjuna at the level of Karma Yoga. So this is especially the third chapter. Krishna talks about it that we all have to do our duty no matter how difficult it is. And if we don't do our duty, then everybody will start dodging their duty when it is difficult, and society will collapse. So this is one level of answer. That for you, it is important that you do your duty of fighting, even if the opponents are your relatives. And of course, Krishna gives Atma Gyan. And when Krishna gives Atma Gyan, that is not to assure Arjuna that you are not going to die. Some people say that Arjuna became fearful and Arjuna developed some nerves. Like sometimes people, when they have to do some big performance, big event, they develop nerves. Somebody has to give a talk or somebody has to participate in drama, they get stage fright. So Arjuna's fear was not like that. See, Arjuna had fought far tougher opponents before. Arjuna had fought in far more difficult odds before. The Virat Yuddha, he was all alone. So, did Arjuna have fear? Well, yes, he did have fear, but the fear was not of death or his own death. The fear was not of his own death. Not once in any of the arguments that he gives does he mention, what if I'll die. His fear was of doing the wrong thing, of making a wrong choice that could lead to disaster. So, suppose the company is going down and the CEO is there, and the CEO has to decide, should we just let the company go down and salvage as much as we can so that we can at least give some severance benefits to people? Or should we try to save the company? That means we have to cut down everybody's salary, we might have to let go of some people, and then we might survive, but we may not survive. It's not an easy decision. The CEO is only worried, I have bought this mansion, and how will I pay for the mortgage if I'm no longer the CEO? That's a much more self-centered one. But how I can, what will be best for my employees? If that is a concern, then that is a much bigger concern. So Arjuna's concern is a bigger concern. So now with this focus, that when we talk about dharma, different dharmas may pull us in different directions. And when we talk about doing our dharma, it is that whichever larger whole we are a part of, we need to be a part of that whole problem. So if we are in a country and we don't pay taxes, and then the government catches us, is that because of past karma? No, it is because of present karma. Isn't it? So a dharma means that if I don't belong properly to whatever larger whole I am a part of, that will create problems. So sometimes even when you practice bhakti, I talk about bhakti more tomorrow, but even as bhaktas, we are belonging to particular larger groups. Say, if I have a body that is diabetic, and if somebody gives me Tirupati Balaji Prasad, and I say, oh, this is Tirupati Balaji Prasad, and I take it. Now, spiritually, it may benefit me, but physically, it will cause an incident. It will have detrimental consequences. So, if I am right now residing in a body that is diabetic, I have to honor that, recognize that reality, and act accordingly. So, whichever larger collective we are a part of, if we don't belong properly to that collective, the problems that come are problems that are self, and those problems. So, dharma is about choices that will ensure that we don't increase our problems. Ideally, we don't increase our problems, but or minimally, we don't increase our problems. Ideally, better is that we create a more positive situation for ourselves. So, I didn't want to introduce too many concepts yesterday, but going back to this particular framework here, so after you complete this course, all of you will become IAS. So, what is IAS? There are three kinds of problems in life. There are problems that are inevitable. No matter what we do, we can't do anything about those problems. So, inevitable problems need to be accepted gracefully. And that is what happens to karma. Say, for example, like I got polio. Polio is not a curable disease, manageable disease, not curable. There are problems that are inevitable. Maybe we were born in a family, we were born in a country where there is a lot of environment, there is a lot of weather is bad. inevitable. So inevitable problems need to be accepted. But there are also problems that are avoidable. And avoidable problems, we learn to avoid them by doing them. So, if I have a child and I neglect my child, and the child becomes resentful of the parent, child becomes disobedient to the parents, then that is not because of past failure. That is because of present negligence. Now, sometimes it's also possible the parent may offer may do the very best for the children, and still the children may not turn out to be not so. Then that can be attributed to past failure. But the point is, whichever larger whole we are belonging to, we need to belong properly to that whole, and that way we can avoid problems. And the third is that there are problems which are strengthening problems. Going through those problems makes us better. Now, it's not that all problems will make us better. Okay, you could say that through all problems we can learn something and become better. But it does not that somebody has to become alcoholic to learn that alcohol is bad, isn't it? There are some problems which can very well be avoided. So there are problems which are inevitable, there are problems which are avoidable, and there are problems which are strengthened. So when we are so now every problem in life is not so neat. It's not so simple to clarify or to classify. So is this an inevitable problem? Is this an avoidable problem? Or is this a strengthening problem? But broadly, getting this framework helps. So I'll I'll start with something related to our daily life, and then I'll move towards the Pandavas again. This idea that wherever we are, we belong to a larger whole. So I mentioned that when I had got polio because of a effective vaccine that was given. So I have a maternal uncle who settled in America, and he was among the generally Indians started going to America in the 1970s. So he was among the first generation, first decade he went to America. So when he came to know that I had got polio, first thing he said is sue the clinic, sue the doctor, sue the hospital. Now the West is very much of a very much the word is litigious country. It is a lot of people make cases. So I was in California, LA, and I was going for a program. Many times when I'm traveling, I look at the hoardings, not just the billboards, the hoardings. I'm very interested in the text. I'm not so much a visual person, but what is written over there. And America is the only country till now where I've seen advertisements of lawyers. That so there was one big billboard and it had only three words: "Who hurt who hurt you, and we will sue those people and we will get money for you." So now that was the attitude. So now my father is one of the most calm persons that I ever. His favorite verses on the Bhagavad Gita, the Siddha Prajna section. So, so he told my maternal uncle that in India the legal system is so overloaded that we will spend our whole life going to the court, and probably the court case will come when we've grown old. It will not even come for here. Now that it's happened, let's manage it. Let's not complicate it. So he accepted. Now I have one god brother in America in Florida. He is uh, he is a son of Prabhupada disciples. He's initiated by Radha. And when he was in America, when his wife was pregnant, at that time she had some complications. She was taken to the ICU and ICU. And there, when the baby was born, during that process, because of some medical negligence, the pressure that was put on the baby was too much. And when the baby was born, the daughter had cerebral palsy and many other medical problems. So he told me that he called Maharaj and asked Maharaj, should I accept that this has happened is my past karma, or should I sue the hospital? So Maharaj said that whatever has happened, now we have to accept it. long as daughter is alive, he will have adequate financial and financial support for all round for care for her. Now, of course, this does not in any way replace the fact that she is going to have a very limited existence. But the point over here is that when I met Maharaja, I told Maharaja about this and I asked him that. "Sir, so, did my father do what? Should my father also have sued at that?" I asked him about this particular incident and I told him. So Maharaj said, "No, that we have to see what course of action is the most effective." So, yeah, well, court cases can go on for a very long time. When we are belonging to a larger whole and the effort is not likely to be productive, then dharma doesn't mean you have to keep beating your head against it. But dharma also doesn't mean that if somebody is beating your head against a wall, you have to keep accepting. Where some things can be changed, we should change them. So the idea is that if I am belonging to a larger collective, and when when say the collective does something negative, then for me to seek some remedial action, you could call it revenge, but it's not necessarily revenge. It's just a remedial action. And so, like yesterday I mentioned that the principle of karma is not meant to override normal causality. That normal cause effect connection is there, and we normally start from the drishta karma. We start from the visible cause, and from the visible cause, gradually we move towards the invisible cause. That if we can make sense at the visible level and fix things at the visible level, we should fix things at the visible level. But when we can't, then we should go to the invisible. Now, I was giving this class in Australia, so and I'll give the same example. So one devotee came and told me that I was I'm divorcing my wife, and I was thinking that I will let me go peaceful. But now I decided I'll hire a lawyer and I'll fight for it. The two situations are not similar. So it is not that every situation we should be fighting. Now, this is not a recommendation that you take lawyers and fight. The point is that there is Deshikar. What should we do in what situation? That is something which has to be decided according to practical reasons. So, in that sense, dharma is that there, whichever larger whole I belong to, which is the whole I can belong to productively, which is the whole I can belong to effectively. So, let's look at now, after taking this example, and let's look at the Pandavas' lifetime and see how things happen. In general, if I consider if I'm in the situation that where I am doing a lot and I'm getting very little in return. So broadly, there are three options. We can use the acronym MEC for this. M is mitigate. Mitigate is try to fix it, try to change the system, correct the system by which we will get what we deserve. Second is emigrate. Just leave that whole piece. I don't want to belong to this one. The third is tolerate. Okay, this is the way it is. We can't change it. Let's tolerate. So let's look at this now. All of you have this player's book. Can you go to 2.40, which are trying to discuss this? It's page 44. Like, if you pick up, my dear Lord, let tolerance increase my intelligence, not my ignorance. Mantra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkhadaha agama paino nityas Sthitaam Sthitikshasva Bharata. When the contact with senses with their objects come joy and pain. That time bound like winter's cold in summer. They come and go, forever will never stay. Tolerate them all, marching on. Who would agree that? Yeah, the mind. Mind. No, that is the first time.
My dear Lord, I tend to get so caught up in concern of the body, its nourishment, its comfort, and the positions and possessions associated with it, that the emotional drama surrounding the acquiring and retaining of those things becomes the central focus of my life.
Yes. So here, if you see the context is the previous verses, Dehi knows Vinyatade. Krishna is telling that our real identity is spiritual. So here, this is 2.14. And Krishna is telling Arjuna to tolerate. However, what is he saying you should tolerate? Is he saying tolerate the Kauravas' atrocities? No, they stole your kingdom. They're not ready to return it. No, just let it tolerate it. He's saying it's your own karma, tolerate it. What is he saying you should tolerate? What is he asking tolerate over here? But specifically, what disturbs? Yeah, but no. In this context of the Bhagavad Gita, not a philosophical level, but what is Arjuna especially being asked to tolerate? The pain of fighting Bhishma and Drona. That the pain of fighting the Kauravas were relatives, but especially the pain of fighting Bhishma, Drona. So, although it's going to be painful, he says that they are souls, they are not just the bodies, and that knowledge helps you to tolerate. So when we are tolerating also, tolerance is not the ultimate spiritual principle. It's a very important spiritual principle, but tolerance also requires us to know to tolerate. And that's where the words before this 2.13 gives us intelligence. The Dehi knows Yatha Dehe in this context is about intelligence. So let's look at the second paragraph. Who let read it? Okay, fine, that's it.
Bless me, O Lord, with the intelligence to put first things first. Help me to see the superficiality and temporality of the things related to the body and focus instead on the sustainability and
Substantiality.
substantiality and eternality of the things that nourish the soul.
Yes. So you can pass on that. Vaishnavis can also. So, so tolerance is based on intelligence, and intelligence is about we should know what are the big things in our life and what are the small things in our life. The Prabhupada says later in the 12th chapter, in the 10th chapter in the purport, Buddhir Jnanam Asammoha 10.45, where he explains that Buddhi means intelligence to see things in the proper perspective. So if we sometimes take a selfie, and what happens? The person who is taking the selfie, that person comes very big, and everybody else comes small. And if I don't look very good over here, let's just take a normal photo. So the idea is that things should be in their proper perspective. What is big should be big. What is small should be small. So, and how do we know what is big and what is small? That is determined by intelligence. So without intelligence, we cannot really have tolerance. So I'll talk about this a little bit more. The idea is that tolerance can go wrong in two ways. One is that we make small things very big, and this is intolerance. We are all vulnerable to doing this. Somebody does something which annoys us, somebody speaks something which hurts us, and then we yell and scream, and what could have been a 5 minute hurt becomes a lifelong relationship break. So, in that sense, keeping small things small is important. So, that is how, so with our intelligence, when we have tolerance, we will avoid intolerance. But there is the other extreme we may go to. We go to the next one.
Let me not become indifferent or impotent. When I am dealing with those physical concerns that affect the spiritual, let me not become a passive spectator when faced with atrocity, just as you did not want Arjuna to passively accept the misdeeds of his opponents in the name of tolerance.
Yes. So while tolerance should keep, pass it on to them, that tolerance should not lead us to big things becoming small. If big things become small, that will lead to impotence. Impotence means we are being powerless. We are doing nothing when something should be done. So uh, now, what does it mean? Big things becoming small, or big things being made small? Say, for example, when I travel across and give classes, many times the congregation programs are there. There are parents come with their small children, and if the children are too small, if there's no special arrangement for children to be engaged, the children may cry, children may make some noise, especially small babies if they cry. Now it is a bit of a disturbance. But if a baby cries, and at that time I get angry and I yell at the mother, can you control your mother, baby? If you can't control your child when the child is so small, how are you going to control your child? The child is going to grow big. And you don't deserve to be a parent. Uh, this is a small thing. Baby is crying. If I let a small thing become a big thing, if I make it into a big thing, and what has happened, no matter how good the class I have given, at the end of the at the end of the class, the only thing people will remember is how I yelled at that particular. So that is a problem. Small things should not become big. But suppose a child is crying constantly, baby is crying constantly. It happened. I was in Seattle and I was doing a Western outreach program, and there was one boy, small boy, about 3.5, 4 years old. He was just running around throughout the class, and nobody was doing anything. And sometimes he would come and he came and stood right next to me and was watching what I'm doing. And then he tried to take the pen from my hand. And I was looking at the organizer. The organizer shrugged his head. Didn't do anything. And okay. I also thought maybe I should stop it. But and apparently his mother was there and she was also not doing anything. And somehow we went through the class. And then after that, I asked the devotee, oh, why not stop the child? So this West Outreach program, it happens in a bit of a seedy neighborhood. Seedy means it's like a criminal bit of a criminal neighborhood. And the organizer told me that that boy, his mother is the girlfriend of the local gang leader over there. So so nobody wanted to mess with him. So now, normally speaking, if a child is constantly disturbing, if nobody is able to focus on the class, then we should tell them this: can you take your child outside? Can you pacify your child? So if nobody is able to hear there's a slight distraction, I would say significant distraction, but still the class went on. So if something is a big thing, we cannot let the big thing. We cannot artificially make the big thing small, because if people have come for a talk over here, they're not able to hear the talk only. Then tolerating that would not be a proper thing. So ideally speaking, what tolerance should be doing is when intelligence leads to tolerance. What happens is small things stay small, so that big things stay big. And Now, deciding, of course, which is a small thing and which is a big thing. Now, I have right now used the word small thing and big thing, and I'll change that. I'll not change. I'll nuance that a little bit later. But the idea is that in this context, Krishna tells Arjuna that the big thing is dharma has to be established. The small thing is yes, the Kauravas will die, Bhishma Drona will die, but they are souls, and they are themselves in a bad situation. They have to fight a war that they don't want to fight because they are obligated. They are overall virtuous people. If they, when they die, they will get a better body, and they'll be freed from the current obligations because of which they have to fight against the Kauravas, fight for the Kauravas. So now, what is a small thing and what is a big thing? We need intelligence to understand. But tolerance is about keeping small things small and keeping big things big, or rather, keeping small things small so that we can keep big things big. Say, for example, you're sitting on these chairs. These chairs are reasonably comfortable. But suppose you want a chair with a soft piece, a soft back. That's not there. Now, maybe that's not as comfortable as you would like. But you don't come to a spiritual program to sit on a comfortable chair. That you can do at your home when you're chatting with your family or you're relaxing. You may have an armchair over there, a comfortable chair. So here, the focus is to hear spiritual knowledge. And if there's something that's a bit of a discomfort, and okay, this class is only going to go for 6 hours more, so you can tolerate it. It'll go for half an hour, 1 hour more. So the idea is that some things can be tolerated. So if I've come for the class, hearing the class is a big thing. The chair is not that comfortable. That's not such a big thing. So like that, small things and big things, we need to be able to understand with our intelligence. I think the last part. Would like to read both paragraphs.
Bless me, O Lord, so that I can tolerate the small things in my life and thereby increase my focus on the big things. And bless me, O Lord, to tolerate or downplay as small things,
Do not tolerate.
sorry, no, to, and bless me, O Lord, to not tolerate or downplay as small things the forces that drive me away from the true big things in my life, cultivating my spirituality by connecting with you and contributing to your service even in this world at the physical level.
Yeah. So now, uh, thank you. So many times when I skew classes, I tend to use a bit difficult words. But the difficulty with using difficult words is that I don't know they're difficult words. So I just habitually use them. So when sometimes the audience reads the words, then I say, no, this is not an easy word, it's not a familiar word. So many times I have to decide if somebody is misreading a word or mispronouncing a word. So should I just tolerate the mispronunciation or should I not tolerate it? Now it depends. If it's a small thing, if say somebody reads the as they or them as their or whatever, so it doesn't change much meaning. But like in this case, the not was left out. It changed the meaning completely. So what is a small thing? Now I don't want to make anyone feel bad that they read something wrong. But the purpose of this class is not just to make sure that people don't feel bad. The purpose of the class is to make sure that spiritual wisdom is conveyed properly. So the idea is that what is a small thing and what is a big thing? That's something which has to be decided according to time and circumstances. And tolerance is about keeping small things small and keeping big things big. Sometimes in the programs, they ask small children to read. And when children read, I almost never correct it. Let them read, and afterwards, if they have misread a particular sentence, I will reread that sentence again and read it properly so that people will not misunderstand it. So the thing is, what is now? I don't want to scare the child. The child is taking the initiative to read, then I also want to be sensitive about it. The idea is what is a small thing and what is a big thing. That will vary according to time and circumstance. And dharma, ideally speaking, coming back to our topic of dharma, what Krishna says will happen. He says, Dehi no sunyatha dehe, that is intelligence. Tam satiksha bharata is tolerance. And what is the result of this? He says is transcendence. Yam hina vyathyantyete purusham purusharshava samadukha sukham dhiram somrutattvaya kalpate. So tolerance is not a virtue in isolation. Tolerance should come from intelligence, and tolerance should lead to transcendence. Now, transcendence means what? We go beyond the problem. We go beyond the situation. Something is either the situation itself ends, or we grow and then the situation no longer troubles us. We get used to it or whatever. I'll talk about that in different ways. So, why am I talking about this particular point over here? That when I'm talking about dharma, I said dharma is harmonious belonging. Dharma is that whichever larger collective I'm part of, I should be properly a part of that collective. So if we look at, I said there are three ways in which we can deal with problems: mitigate, emigrate, or tolerate. That's where I started the discussion of tolerate. So in every situation in life, there will always be some unpleasantness. We will never have a perfect situation, and that's why everyone needs to develop their tolerance skills. So if we look at the Pandavas, when the first thing happened to them, when Bhima was poisoned, he came back. When he came to know that Duryodhana tried to poison him, he was enraged. He said, I'm going to go and beat up Duryodhana. I'm going to teach him a lesson. Krishna told him, he said, you have no evidence. It just be your word against me. And we are new over here. We don't know who will support us and who will not support us. It's a really serious accusation to say that someone has tried to poison me and said that we don't want to split our family. Maybe he's just insecure. And he's just insecure. Then we'll be watchful. We'll not provoke him, but we will just move on. So here the Pandavas chose to talk. Now, the understanding they had is, see, there is a difference between insecurity and the two are not the same thing. Insecurity is both may arise in relationship with someone else. Say if I am a good speaker and I'm giving regular talks at a particular place, and some other speaker comes over there and starts giving talks that are more appreciated than my talks. Now, and if I start feeling bad about it, it's not necessary that it is envy. It could also be insecurity. Envy is where I want to pull down that other person. I'll badmouth that person. I'll spread some rumors about that person. I don't want that glory for that person. But insecurity could be that if that person becomes so prominent, will I have some place on it? Will I have some value on it? So insecurity is a natural human emotion, and it's important that that cannot be suppressed. That it should not be labeled as. So the idea is, Yudhishthira said maybe he's just insecure that we have come new over here and we are being respected more than him. Okay, so maybe he's just insecure. So now poisoning someone is not a small thing, but they decided let's go. But after that, there was the house of black. They were burnt. The Lakshagraha, there was a fire. Now, when this happened, the Pandavas decided that Duryodhana couldn't have done this to not just send us off to a different place, but to have a whole palace built that could be burnt very easily. How many people are there in this process? So they decided just to they didn't go back to the same place, or they didn't conflict. So at this particular time, the idea is that what is the best thing to do at this point? So you could say that we are Guru Amshas, we belong to this, we have our rights. But in that particular situation, that their identity as members of the Kuru dynasty was more of a threat for them than a benefit. So they concealed their identity. They lived as Brahmins. And it's interesting that the Pandavas could get away as Brahmanas repeatedly. And they were hiding because they had grown up among Brahmanas in China. They had lived in the forest. At that time, they were surrounded by sages. They did not have royal comforts. So they could live relatively simply. Now, after that, when Draupadi was dishonored, at that time, a particular line was crossed. Terrible, terrible line. Still, the Pandavas, we go to the forest. We gambled, we lost, we go to the forest. But after that, when Krishna was also dishonored, they tried to arrest Krishna. This is an ultimate dishonor. So right now, say between Ukraine and Russia, there are peace negotiations going on. Now, if say the head of state of Ukraine goes to Russia, or the head of state of Russia comes to Ukraine, and instead of negotiating, they arrest him. Even they attempt to arrest him. That outrageous. That would be instant call for increased war. So when not only did Duryodhana do something terribly wrong, but he refused to change in any way. That is the time the Pandavas decided we have to so tolerate, emigrate. So okay, I'm in this larger hole, I'll stay in this larger hole, I just get out of that. So when the Pandavas got out of that hole, what happened? They later on in Draupadi's Swayamvar, they won the hand of Draupadi. And then now they were not just orphan kids. They were the son-in-law of a powerful rival king. And Dhritarashtra was no longer there. So the idea is that for each one of us, we have many larger wholes that we belong, larger collectives that we belong to. And in some collectives, our belonging will be more productive. Some collectives, our belonging will be less productive. And this is where I link this topic to yesterday's topic of karma. So the idea is that when we say that we are in a particular collective, particular larger whole, where we are giving a lot, but we get very little. Now, why are we in that situation? That is because of past. That being in that situation is because of past. Like some students, some children may not have a very high IQ. No matter how much they study, they can't really remember, they can't understand, they can't express. So we can say that is because of past. Some people they may not look very attractive. Everybody can try to look as attractive as possible. But there is an actual attractiveness that is there. No matter how much somebody may try, how much makeup somebody uses, how much whatever they do, they cannot increase their attractiveness beyond a particular. So now, if we are in that particular situation where we are belonging to a larger collective, where that collective is taking a lot from us but not giving any significant benefits. So that situation is because of our strength. So we need to accept the situation. So saying that life is one. Like yesterday I said that some people in India may be born in a family where there is poverty or at least there's not prosperity. The country doesn't have social security. But here, the good is that most people, not everyone, most people are born fairly stable families. In the West, they may have social security, they may have luxury, but they don't hold secure roots. That's a problem. So, whichever larger collective we are placed in, for each one of us, some collectives we will have more available, than some collectives we will get very less. So now with this understanding that in some collectives I feel this, then we need to decide among the many collectives that I'm a part of, which collective should I focus my energy on? large collective, should I focus my energy? Say a student, while growing up, can say, okay, I can become an engineer, I can become a doctor, I can become an author, I can become a. Nowadays, everybody wants to become a social media influencer. Now, these are all nowadays the great lie of modernity is that everybody can do everything if they are just little bit. That's not true. Yes, there are many social limitations which can be pushed beyond, but it's not that everybody can do everything. Somebody who doesn't have a single musical bone in their body, if they try to become the lead musician for a musical concert, it's going to be a disaster. So, in some larger collectives, we are just not going to be able to work. So, we need to be able to accept that. So, accept that some problems are some things cannot be changed. But just because some things can't be changed doesn't mean nothing can be changed. So for each one of us, some areas may be such that there will not be much growth, much productivity happening. Now that doesn't mean we have to completely leave that area. That depends. We may still be a part of that, but we may not focus so much on that particular large country. The Pandavas fought against the Kauravas and they killed the Kauravas. But it was for justice, it was not for revenge. That's why they did not take it out on Dhritarashtra. It's because you didn't control your son, and that's why you are guilty by association, and we will punish you also. No, he saw Duryodhana and his supporters with the problem, Kaurava, his brothers with the problem. He stopped them, he neutralized them, and he stopped them. So it's not that they completely rejected their Guru Vamshadhar. They took care of their uncle and aunt respectfully. But that does not mean that they allowed them to commit atrocities against them. So whichever larger collective we are a part of, we need to focus on belonging in a way that we most connected to that collective. So now some collectives it may be possible to work. Some collectives it may not be possible. And that's okay. So the Bhima would never get the glory of being the king. Now he accepted that. Now who will not want to be the king? God appointed them to be king. But if becoming a king means that I have to betray my own brother, that is a pride and not. That means to get into that collective of not just being a Kshatriya prince but being a Kshatriya king. I want to I have to go out of the relationship of being with my brother. And I don't go. Now Kaikai was misled temporarily by Manthara, and therefore she said, getting my son to become the king is so important that I don't care if our larger family is broken. But that was a temporary phase, and that phase ended for her. So, in that sense, we have many dharmas, and which dharma among the various, like among these, which ones should we focus on the most? So, when do we tolerate? When do we mitigate? When do we mitigate? So that depends on what is a big thing and what is a small thing. Now, you may decide, how do I know what is the big thing and what is the small thing? And that I will talk about tomorrow, more elaborately, when I talk about the purpose of life. That our life has a purpose. And yes, there is a spiritual purpose, and ultimately we're going to go back to Krishna. But we also have a purpose in this life. And what is a big thing and what is a small thing? What to tolerate, what not to tolerate. That has to be decided in the light of our purpose. So, like I said, if you come here for the purpose of hearing a class, the chair is not that comfortable, that's okay. But if you go to a five-star hotel and you're going for a retreat, and there they have uncomfortable chairs, this is not acceptable. This is supposed to be a retreat center, so be comfortable. So, what is a big thing and what is a small thing? That needs to be evaluated in terms of the purpose. However, one more point I will add over here, this is a takeaway, that it is not that our purpose of life is simply life's purpose is not to exhaust our past. I talk more about the purpose, specifics, but it is like we are in a painful situation. Somebody is hurting us a lot. And we say that, this person is hurting you is your own past. That person is the instrument of your past karma, problem. And yes, we all will be hurt by, sometimes I will hurt you, sometimes you will hurt. That's just the way life is. We are all fallible beings. But if somebody is repeatedly, intentionally hurting us, not occasionally or accidentally, somebody is abusing us, somebody is threatening us, then the purpose, we don't succeed in life by exhausting our past. The purpose of life is to discharge our present. We will grow in life not simply by exhausting our past. We grow in life by discharging our dharma. And dharma will cultivate. So, say if we are a parent and we have a family member who is abusing us, now we may say, I'll tolerate it. And maybe we tolerate it. But if they start abusing our child, they start hurting our child, should we tolerate that? Should we tell our child, oh, this is your past karma coming, tolerate it? No. There, the focus in decision making is that our focus should not always be what is whose past karma. What is whose past karma. Our focus needs to be my present karma. If say if somebody is robbed, imagine future, say we have a more dharmic rule, we have a more spiritually centered. Say somebody is robbed and we are robbed and go to the police. Say, I've been robbed. And the police, according to your own philosophy, you are robbed because of your past life. So accept it. That is outrageous, isn't it? See, you are taking a salary. What is your dharma? Your dharma is to protect the citizens. So when somebody is going through difficulties, the primary consideration should not be that, oh, this is my past karma, so I have to, so I have to do. So I have to accept it. Rather, what is my dharma? So suppose we are working in a job where the boss is a little rude. The boss gives us too much money. Now we may not want to be in that situation. But maybe that particular job is given us a good salary. Or we have good career growth prospects after we work on. Then that is the big thing for us. Okay, getting the money or getting this on my CV that I work in this place. That is a big thing, and therefore we can make this a small thing. But the idea is just tolerating whatever bad is happening. That is not a virtue. Of course, reacting to everything bad that is happening, that is also not a virtue. So overreaction and underreaction, both are problems. Now, but what is the right reaction? That depends on what is the big thing for us. So we'll add one more takeaway over here, and we will that when we go through life, we can say that there is our present karma, which can be positive or it can be negative, and we have our past karma. Past karma can be positive or it can be negative. And based on this, we can have four quadrants now. There are present karma is positive, past karma is negative. Both are negative. Our present karma is negative, our past karma is positive. And both are positive. So now among these, which is the best situation to be? Fourth quadrant. So it's like in this situation, what will happen is based on yesterday's understanding that if I do work 100, that's my present karma. And when the past 100 comes, and I'll get result worth 200. So this is where we will be super effective. And we all would like to be in this area. So we could say that Yudhishthir after the war was in this quadrant form. Now, if we could say that, say if our present karma is good but our past karma is bad, then what will happen? That we might be putting in effort worth 100, but the result we get is 10. Or in the case of the Pandavas, they might be getting maybe minus 10 also. What might happen from past? Minus 100 things. So, so we are getting minus 90 from the past. So this is where we will be under what we are doing. We are doing it, but we are not getting the results. Now we could say this was Vidura was always wise, but as long as Dhritarashtra was had Duryodhana in his life, having Duryodhana in his life, Vidura's words did not help. So now it's interesting that Dhritarashtra liked to hear wisdom, but that's all he liked to hear wisdom, but don't act on it. So the very time Vidura felt that I'm getting to him, yeah, he's understanding, he's nodding. But at the end, he would nod and do nothing. However, we could say this is Vidura before the war. Now, even Vidura, after, it was not that Vidura became purer necessarily. That's also possible. But what happened was, Vidura, after the war, when he came back later, at that time his words did enlighten. So now, if we consider somebody's past karma is positive, but their present karma is negative. This is actually where somebody is doing minus 100, but their past karma is plus 100, plus 200. So what happens is they still get good results. Now, this is actually dangerous. This is where a person will be destructive. They're doing bad things, but they are getting away with doing bad things. And Duryodhan was most of his life in this situation. Now, of course, his karma did catch him. His karma did catch him, and he lost everything. And he suffered a very painful death in one sense because he saw everyone he cared for die. All his other brothers died. Karna was his best friend died. Shakuni died, and all his dreams were reduced to ashes. Finally, he was now somebody's past karma and present karma both might be negative. Now, in that case, what will happen is they are going to be basically ineffective. Ineffective means when they try to do something good also. First of all, they don't even try to do something good. But the interesting thing is that even when they want to do bad things, even doing bad things successfully requires some good karma from the past. So like some people may say that that I tried to live a law-abiding life. I was never able to make any money. I was not able to grow. I am going to become a I am going to become a criminal. I'll become the next underworld don. And they try to rob a bank. And the first time they rob a bank, they are arrested. And then they get a bad attorney and a bad judge. And they are sentenced for 30 years life in prison. Or 30 years. And then what happens is they try to do something bad, but that also didn't work. So not every person who wants to become a criminal becomes even a successful criminal. So to do bad karma successfully also requires past good karma. In that sense. So the idea is somebody has no good karma from the past and they're not doing any good karma now. So then they are not going to do, even if they want to do some harm, they will not be able to do much harm. So in many ways, Dhritarashtra was in this category. I won't say entirely. Dhritarashtra was not an active villain. He was a passive villain. So he could never become the king. Now, because he had some good karma, because of which he at least always born blind, he was born he was born in a royal family. So I could say I won't put him entirely in this quadrant. But my point is that did Dhritarashtra do a lot of damage? Well, yes, but it was more indirect by what he allowed Duryodhana to do. Now you could say that he also had Dhritarashtra had a son named Yutsu. When Gandhari was pregnant for a very long time, so Dhritarashtra laid with one of his maid servants, and then he had a son over there. So this son was was not in the proper lineage, so he never got any influence. Either Duryodhana was very affectionate towards him, not Dhritarashtra was very affectionate towards him. So he stayed with the Kauravas for a long time. But just before the war, he shifted over to the Pandavas, and then he performed the last rites for the Kauravas after they had passed. So it's not accurate, but my point is that this is also possible. So like I do -10, and there is -10 from the past. So I get -2. It's not minus, it's not a very big minus also. It's not a very big plus also. So now among these four quadrants, which is the best quadrant to be? Fourth quadrant. So this is what we could say is what is most desirable. But is it controllable? Can we put ourselves in the fourth quadrant? What we can do, we could say this is the desirable for us. But what is doable for us is we can ensure that if we are not in quadrant 4, at least we are in quadrant 1 or 2. This color is blue. I have very good karma for drawing. So this is what is doable for us. I'll come back. So we can ensure that I will always make the right choice. I'll always let my present karma be positive. And keeping our present karma positive is basically dharma. So keep doing our part constructively. That is dharma. And if we do this, then we create the best possible future for ourselves. That future may come tomorrow, that future may come after 1 year, may come after 10 years, or it may come next year. But that future will come. We are creating the best possible situation for ourselves to be in the future. And what we want to avoid is we don't know what our past karma is, but we can try to avoid making sure that our present karma is bad. This is a dharma we want to avoid. So in tomorrow's session, I will talk about how bhakti can help us to come towards quadrant 4. Or if we can't come towards quadrant 4, how bhakti can help us to accept when we are in quadrant 1. Because in quadrant 1, when we're doing something and not getting the results, we can start feeling very bitter. So we will talk about that aspect of bhakti in the last session. So the idea is I'm going through a difficult time right now, but let me not do actions that will either in the present or in the future make me stressed. So let me accept the difficult situation by understanding dharma. But let me also commit to doing my dharma so that I can pass through these difficult times as with as less scars or with as less damage as possible. Let me summarize what we discussed. Today I was discussing the topic of dharma. And in this topic of dharma, I talk about CI, C was the concept. So I explained dharma as harmonious belonging. And for all of us, we belong to some larger collective. So that is our dharma. But the collective also has to do its dharma by giving us what we what is right for us. Now, adharma can happen when sometimes two collectives may pull us in opposite directions. So one collective requires us to do one thing, like Arjuna required to fight or don't fight. Then which collective do we belong to at that time? So now some other collectives may give us very little back, some collectives may give us a lot back. There's more than what we deserve also. That's also possible. So in that connection, I discussed the concept. We went into understand dharma further, that dharma is not, I'm talking about dharma is not just a moral principle, it's just a functional or operational principle in life. It is moral also, but it's functional. Wherever we are, we need to belong harmoniously with the Lord. So in the insights, I talked about how when I give the example of say a we are in a particular situation. So should we I talk about this acronym that what are three things we could do? Tolerate, immigrate, or mitigate. So which option should I choose? So that means say, if I'm in larger collective, I accept that I am doing a lot, but I get very little. If I emigrate, that means I just decide that I'll go into some other collective where I'll be more demanded. Or mitigate means that while I'm here, I try to put myself in a situation over here where I can fix the situation. So we discussed about the Pandavas, also chose all these three options. And then with respect to tolerance, we discussed that Gita talks about tolerance in 2.14. But before we tolerate, we need to have intelligence. So tolerance is preceded by intelligence. The previous one, intelligence means to know what are the big things and what are the small things. That will lead us to transcendence. So this transcendence means a problem will not trouble us. So problems can go wrong in two ways. When we make a small thing big, that is intolerance, and that is a far more common problem for us in today's world. But there's other problems also there. That sometimes we will make big thing small. So ideally, tolerance means we keep the small things small so that we can keep the big things big. And what are small things? What are big things? That depends on intelligence, but it is also guided by purpose. So then finally, takeaway for us is twofold. That when we are acting in life, our focus in acting should not be simply past karma. What is Guru? This is my past karma, so I should thank you on this. Or this is their past karma, let them suffer. Our focus should be our so that means if I am functioning that over here, then my present karma, uh, my present karma should be positive. I should be doing dharma. Or it can be positive or it can be negative. Past karma can be positive or negative. So we would like to be in quadrant 4. This is the best situation to be. We discuss how the Kaurava Pandavas after the war were here. Vidura before the war was here. And so here will be best super effective. Here will be under effective, like Vidura was. Or we can be destructive, as Duryodhan was. We are past good. Or we can be just ineffective. We are not able to do anything either positive or negative. So while we would like to be here, what we can ensure is that we stay. We would like to be in quadrant 4, we can ensure that we stay in quadrant 4 or quadrant 1. And in that way, whatever situation life was in, we can make the best of that situation. Hare
Great.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Next question.
You said you did not understand the tolerance.
Probably I cannot get the second and third one.
So when this is you cannot get how they work. So the idea is that if I am in the second or the third quadrant, let's consider second quadrant. That means my past karma is bad and present karma is also bad. So it's like some kids are mean. They want to do bad things, but but nobody listens to them. Somebody says, let's spread this rumor but nobody reads their social media. So they want to spread a rumor, but they're not able to spread the rumors. They want to do bad things, but they're not able to do bad things. So that's why they are ineffective, whatever they want to do. But now, somebody plants some rumor about something, and then that rumor becomes viral. And another person suddenly heard, and this person becomes famous or infamous or whatever. Now, why did that particular rumor become viral? That was because they had the past experience. Now, if they had shared some good wisdom also, that would also become viral. But they shared something bad. So that's why they still not.
This is a very sensitive topic, and without elaborating too much, how do we relate this to infidelity in relationships? Like at times, women or men decide to stay back because of obligations or pressure. So when should we know that we need to break or indicate or tolerate? Because that same person who has caused us harm, what if that same person has done good to us?
Okay, so the two parts of the question is not correct. Infidelity is more of a moral lapse.
Yeah,
And
more of like being unfair or cheating.
cheating in the relationship. But then you are saying that we may want to stay, somebody may want to stay in the
Yeah,
relationship in
because
spite of that.
because of obligations or emotional attachment.
I don't think there's one answer to this. We need a lot of context to understand this. But broadly, mistakes that happen, there are mistakes fall in three categories. There are mistakes can either be circumstantial, or they can be conditional, or they can be intentional. Mistakes. When I talk about mistakes, we have to see what kind of mistake. So they can be circumstantial. Circumstantial arises largely from circumstances. Intentional means that they themselves knowingly they do. So we could say, now how do we know the difference between these two? It is largely based on how they act thereafter. So if I put it, if what is their internal emotion and what is their external action. So if it's a circumstantial error, that means what? There is internally there will be regret, and externally there will be fall. So Kaikeyi did something terrible, but when Bharat brought her back to her senses, she deeply regretted. She never did anything. And she went with Ram, went with Bharat to try to get Ram back. So that was a one thing. Everybody can be caught. That doesn't make it right. But sometimes such things happen. So in the Bhagavatam, there's a story of Brahmana Ajamil. So Ajamil was just going on his normal daily chores, and he saw a woman and a man engaged in intimate activities. The woman was a prostitute. He saw her. He came back from there. He pulled himself back from the brink at that moment. And he went and he was with her. So now in this case, at least it was completely circumstantial. He was what circumstance came upon him. He didn't plan to go into the business. Now if you consider that, so in general, if this is the case, it's best to forgive and forgive. It's difficult, but it's best not to hold that wrong against that person. Right? There's no mention that Ram or Bharat repeatedly quoted it for what she did. Now, of course, this has consequences. She should passed away. Nothing that could be done. The mistake is the mistake. Now, if you consider, sometimes there is no regret and no regret. So we can say Ravan. He didn't have any regret with the abduction, or Duryodhana when he tried to dishonor Draupadi. regret was his plan was not successful. He could not fully discover. Could not fully discover. Was there any reform? Absolutely. So if it is intentional, the person knows it and does something wrong, then what happens is that is the time there has to be some consequences. Now exactly how the consequences will come, you know, that depends. If we are in a position of authority, we can punish them. If we are not in a position of authority, we may have to create a break from them or a distance from them. That's something which is depends on whether it's happening repeatedly and all that is there is justification. In the case of Duryodhana, not only the same thing happened. Worse. You could say that burning the Pandavas is worse than trying to destroy Kurukshetra. No, that was secret and this is public. And it has become so shameless that he thinks I can get away by doing something public. So my point is, it's become worse than it is very different. Now there could be something in between that is conditional. The conditional is not, I'm not using the word conditional as adjective for conditions. I'm using it for conditionings. Somebody may have conditionings because of which they have regret, yes, but reform. That means they keep, oh, I'm sorry, I did this, I'm very sorry, I'll never do this again. But they do the same thing. Now, if this is happening, now does that make that person a bad person? Well, yes. Here, the very least is that person can be ready to accept boundaries, serious boundaries. Somebody is alcoholic. They say, no, and after they use alcohol and then they become abusive, and they say, oh, I'm sorry, I'll never do this. But if they're really serious, then get into a direction, take some freedom, and stay away from alcohol, or at least accept the fact that you have to go to a particular place. What the boundaries will be will vary. If they accept the boundaries, then so sometimes what happens is that our condition is so strong, so strong that that it may override their present good intentions. The intentional, don't have any good intentions, they have only bad intentions. But sometimes the good intentions may be over. So at that time, now we can't change the conditioning internally like this. It's going to take time. So then at least that person can accept some restrained circumstances. Like the parents, if the child is very mischievous, child is something dangerous, they are grounded. And the grounding is not going to remove the mischievousness of the child. But at least the child accepts those consequences. The child will recognize that these consequences, I should not have done this. The child will develop better capacity to self-reliance. So in that sense, it's a difficult. So if you consider Ajamil's story, the first lapse was circumstantial. But as the story moves forward, once he was with her, and you could say that the desire was so strong and he couldn't resist it. But then after that, he said, he went to be with me. He said, I want to be with her. And to be with her, what he did, he rejected his place. He rejected his parents. And he was a Brahmana. Now, if a Brahmana is living with a prostitute, nobody will call them to do their wedding ceremony. So he lost his job also. And then he went down to the Netherlands, becoming a robber, becoming a plunderer, becoming a robber, becoming a criminal. So see, there are, in this case, what he was doing is, he was breaking the walls that were put in. Having a family is a wall. You reject your family, reject your spouse, reject your parents, lose your job. These are so eventually it will be intentional. So the circumstantial, again going back to our philosophy, the circumstantial may come upon someone because of destiny. By destiny, somebody is doing a job and they go to a particular place and living in a hotel and somebody is sitting next to nearby. Now, is it all destiny? Not exactly. They could have done something to prevent it. But it can happen. By destiny, somebody may be put in particular circumstances. But it is being done repeatedly. And if somebody is trying to create situations, so then it is definitely. So to put it again in terms of our framework, in this case, it is tolerated. Tolerated where it's a circumstantial. it's conditional, we try to mitigate it. We mitigate it by helping that person live within certain points. They have to do that, but we try to fix the situation for them as much as we can. But it's intentional that we have to. It's not that simple. Sometimes we may also want to mitigate over it. But I'm saying that if we don't have the power to mitigate, we may be. So it's a complex situation. We have to carefully consider the bigger context.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Firstly, I would be very grateful for Mataji for asking such a wonderful question. In such a wonderful question, what she asked. In relation to this,
Wonderful is not the word that comes to mind, but it's an important question.
yeah.
I think it's a general question.
So, Prabhuji, one thing which I have noticed with this table which you have drawn, it's like, say, if I am hurt because of somebody did like that to me, these are the three steps which I can take so that I can know which decision and which choice I need to make. But many times it has happened, which I have noticed is the opposite person tries to somewhere like, gaslight you to tell that, no, we were not actually doing it intentionally, it was come circumstantially. And then sometimes you start questioning yourself only. And then you start trying to say that, oh, maybe I should be in that tolerate state, but actually I should have been in the emigrate or the mitigate decision. And that also creates a little confusion, coaches. How do we exactly know that, no, I am right, I know what I'm doing, at least this is my dharma, and I'm sorry, this is the way I'm going to draw that line.
So try to analyze. We can try to analyze whether some action or circumstance. But then sometimes the other person will also try to manipulate or gaslight. Then we start doubting ourselves. Well, I would say at one level, life does not come with either clarity or certainty. Clarity that this is what actually happened, and certainty that what I'm doing is the right thing. We can always second guess ourselves. So, like going back to the point of when Duryodhan was, when Yudhishthira told Duryodhan, just tolerate Duryodhan, just accept it. Was that the right decision? Could it have been that at that time he might have really beaten Duryodhan up, dragged him in front of everyone? Could it have been that at that time everybody would have been exposed to his nature, everybody would watch watchful, and he would have been, even if he had not had a change of heart, at least he would have been cured. But who knows? Maybe that if he had been exposed, he would have become even more vicious, even more malicious master. So it's not or and whatever decision, this is the best course of action. And even if we consult some elders, some wise people, even if we consider something else, see, nobody is omniscient. So we cannot know for sure. What we can do is, and that's why Bhishma says about this to Vipra Dharma Anchutashraya. Although you were living always in the shelter of Brahmanas, in the shelter of Dharma, and even the shelter of God, still bad decisions. How much of it because of his bad decisions? Your point is, Jivitanartham Krishna. After you are living some virtuous fixation, it should not happen. Life should not happen like this. So, my first point is to be never no point. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean you have to live with uncertainty all the time. But don't beat yourself up if you later find out it's been a wrong decision. Because sometimes what the reality is revealed clearly only with time. And then, when at a particular time everything is exposed, then you can say, I didn't notice this side, I didn't notice this side, I didn't notice this side. Or I would have seen this pattern in this. But sometimes it's just like it's difficult at that point. So don't be too hard on ourselves if we don't take the right decision at the right time. Sometimes it takes time to realize. Now, having said that, the two three things help. That the first thing is, let's say, if somebody is manipulating possible, let's say if this person has some agenda to make billions of dollars, we should have somebody else whom we can talk to. And that person should be close to us. Let's say if that Manthara manipulating Kaikeyi, disagreeable, but she had never been vicious. So in one sense, Kaikeyi was caught off guard, she was unprepared. So she couldn't control Mantra's action, she couldn't control the influence by it. But her mistake was she didn't consult. She could have asked Krishna, is this the reason you're doing this? If she felt Dashrath is already in the conspiracy, she could have gone and asked Vashishta. The Vashishta was the Kulu Guru, he was the Raj Guru. Whether Bharat became the king or Ram became the king, he would still be the Guru. So he had no agenda. The point is, if we have some other, now of course, we cannot, in some private matters, we cannot really talk with everyone. So we have to have trustworthy people. And that's where having relationships, close relationships is important. And any relationship, now every relationship will bring some boundaries with it. But if any relationship is taken as completely isolated from everyone else, that is not good. So we should have some other people looking at it. Now they can't take the decision for us. But it is so that having them talking with us, but it's helping at least to be there from this perspective. And the third thing would be writing. Because the writing helps when as long as thoughts are inside the head, then it's just that it's very difficult to figure out. They congest us. But we write things down. Okay, this was this happened at that time. This is how this person saw it. Or this person told me to write this. It happened here also. It happened here also. So thoughts, when they are written down, they become things in terms of words. And we can evaluate them better objectively. So especially for bigger things, so I would say give you patience in terms of don't take major reactions and don't be hard on yourself. Second is association, some relationship somewhere, and then some kind of journaling or writing. Because major decisions cannot be taken just in our head. That can help us also.
So, Prabhuji, so with this kind of understanding of Dharma as a collective, as the individual being a part of a collective. So, and we haven't yet spoken about the Bhakti part or being compulsorily being a part of a collective where you're connected to, where like God is centered. So, if that aspect is not taken, and if the individual today feels that collectives and imbalances are dharma in humans. So the more the collectives, the more there is imbalance. If the individual takes up that stand, and the individual wants to probably simplify collectives to like we don't want the standard collective in society. What happens now? We don't want family. We don't want responsibility. And maybe the only collective I want to relate to is probably my work, because okay, money is needed and money solves a lot of problems. Problem solving is a part of not creating imbalance. So if this doesn't prove that to be a dharma with this kind of definition, like if the center is only I ideally want to belong to just one collective and
That say the more collectives we belong to, the more complexity it brings to our life. If somebody decides I don't want to belong to any collective, I don't want to have a family, I don't want to be part of it, I just have my job and that's what I do. Now that does seem to be a convenient way of functioning. But however, convenience is convenience. It's not. So see, everybody, everybody has varna and ashram. So now both of them are related. Broadly, our varna is associated with our job. Our ashram is associated with our family. So when Narad Muni comes to meet Yudhishthira, after Yudhishthira becomes the king, he says that Yudhishthira, you have three collectives that you are a part of. you are a family member, and then you are a virtuous person. So he says, Dharma, Artha, and Kama. So now here he's using Dharma in the sense of Bhakti, of Paramatma. So Dharma, Artha, and Kama. So broadly, Kama is associated with family. Artha is associated with our job. And Dharma is associated with our temple as well. So he tells them, don't pursue any one of these at the cost of the other. So don't pursue Dharma so much that you neglect Artha or Kama. Don't pursue Artha so much that you neglect Dharma or Kama. And don't pursue Kama so much that you neglect Dharma or Kama. If somebody pursues only Karma, they don't just become materialist, they become a hedonist. If a person is just completely irresponsible, they are maybe they have inheritance, they have good looks, they can continue like that for some life. But their life becomes completely meaningless. Somebody pursues only Artha, they become a workaholic. And they may achieve a lot in their life, but at the end of the day, they don't have relationships. And it's good to have friendly relationships or casual relationships, but we need relationships also. And now, if somebody pursues only Dharma, they can be very fierce spiritualists, but more often than not, they just become escapists. So, either of these are sufficient or low in themselves. Now, what happened is, talking about it from a slightly greater perspective. See, uh, now some people say, okay, be a traditional society, we should not work, we should take care of the family. Well, that is oversimplification. We see even in the Bhagavatam, if you see, there's a fruit vendor. She had one. The gopis, the fruit vendor was selling fruit. The gopis will sell what curd and milk products. But they had those. Draupadi, Mahabharata said that she actually was taking care of the entire treasury of it. So she said she was taking care of the royal household and she was taking care of the treasury. And this is described in Mahabharata in the conversation between him and her and Satyabhama. So, yeah, it's possible. But the thing was, in the past, in pre-industrial society, women could do their varana along with their ashram. Somebody at the cottage industry is there, somebody is a farmer, somebody, Prabhupada also talks about it. In the past, somebody would be a weaver, and the husband would have a spinning wheel, the wife would have a spinning wheel, and the child would also have a small piece. And everybody would do that. But what happened in post-industrial society is that the work went far away from home. And then women had to choose between Varna and Ashram. And initially, biology one means women had to choose Ashram. But then, as technology advanced, the birth control pill came, abortion came, all those things came about, and then now the whole feminism, it is going towards saying, just choose Varna, you don't need Ashram. But if you see, nobody satisfied by Varna. Even men, the men may prioritize Varna or Ashram. But why do they work? Ultimately, they work at the end of the day, they get money. So, in one sense, getting any money is only Varna and not Ashram. So, it was a historical anomaly that women had to choose Ashram and give up the Varna because the way society became structured. But now, to some extent, now with the work from home and with online engagements and things like that, there's a restructuring of life happening. So there is a possibility that you can actually manage Varna and Ashram both. Now it is often required that, say, for a woman, especially when she is in the childbearing age and she has children, maybe they have to postpone the Varna for some time to take care of the Ashram. But later on they can start the Varna. Maybe if somebody says, I want to grow as in the career as my main competence, that would be different. But the point is success is not unidimensional. The great problem with modern society is we are defining success only in terms of money and not in terms of ashram. So because of that, what happens is everybody is focusing on the ashram. It starts becoming de-glamorized. top cities, 6 cities in America. There is Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, cities. If you go to the parks, there are more dogs than children in those parks. So people don't have children, but they don't have a need to nurture. And we have a need to nurture, need to take care of. Because in any relationship, we have a need to be valued, need to be loved, need to be respected. But we should also have a need to be cared that how much will I be missed if I'm not there? How much other person need it? And that need to be needed is satisfied when it's given. So when we decide to not have children, people lavish so much attention on their needs. I'm in California as a couple have come to my program. So after that they're talking and I asked what to do. So the husband was working from there. The wife said, I'm a stay-at-home dog mom. Now, if she had been a stay-at-home mom, she would not have probably wanted to tell it, But I'm a dog mom. A literal word is actually a dog mom and a cat mom is a real thing. So, so it is that now has to be directed somewhere. So I think complexity is the price that we pay for relationships. But it also brings now I would say there is a there's a difference between this is a philosophical concept, but whichever the difference between complexity and complication. Complexity is a fact of life. We cannot avoid it. Life is complex. But just because it is complex, it does not mean we have to make our life complicated. So complication would be like somebody has a family but they want to maintain 50 other relationships. Or somebody has 500 social media followers and they want to stay 500 crores, they call their Facebook friends or whatever. I want to stay in touch with them. That is complication. But complexity is just part of it. You cannot avoid complexity. So thank you very much. So tomorrow's session, we will be discussing about Bhakti and how Bhakti builds into this worldview of karma and dharma and how it can help us to transit problems even when they are present in our lives. Thank you very much. Shri Prabhupada ki,
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki,
Jai.
Gaur Bhakti.
Village Chaitanya Charan ki. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. So thank you all for coming today on time. So we start exactly at 7 p.m. Tomorrow also we will start on the exact time. So now there is Prasadam meeting for all of you. 26%. We will meet tomorrow evening. Hare Krishna. Books you have to return on the counter, and anyone want to purchase it, they can purchase.